And we're back with the Texas Oil and Gas Podcast. We appreciate you tuning in to today's episode. This is episode 183. 183. I'm your host, Josh Shelton, my friend and co-host, Ryan Ray. Ryan, it's another day in paradise, man. We're getting close to Christmas, and Thanksgiving's behind us, and it looks like we are gearing up to get some reviews from fourth quarter. Companies doing their year end, and
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to be expecting a lot of good news coming out of some of
No,
these reports.
no. But Josh, real quick before we get into that, so at the end of this month, we have talked for the past few months about, hey, either we're going to have to run ads or we're going to run the newsletter ad. We prefer to do the newsletter ad because it goes directly into our pockets, right? We don't got to run ads through someone else, but and we can keep the ads minimized. But if we do not get a certain amount of newsletter subscribers, then we're going to have to just go to the ad model. So we have 3-4 shows left this month. If you want to keep the show kind of like it is, this is a listener decision with your pocketbook, obviously, but a listener decision. So we're going to give you, I think it is 30% off forever to the War Room newsletter. We will put the link at the top of the show notes. And so, Josh, if all of our subscribers, if all our downloads subscribed, we might could make Steffi the intern pay her minimum wage for 1 hour a week, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 1 hour a week. We might bring her on 1 hour a week to pay her for $7.25. So consider doing that. We're not going to do it. Obviously, we're not going to pay Stephanie anything because that would be, she would no longer be a free intern. But in all seriousness, if you want to support the show, that is the best way to do it. War Room Media, we have our Texas Oil and Gas Podcast link. It is the top one. If you use that, that will help us keep from running ads on the show, and we would really appreciate it. If not, then we'll be happy to do the ad reads like everyone else does. So that's it, Josh.
All right, Ryan. Well, we'll kick things off. So a little bit of good news. At least I think it's good news. I didn't have a conversation with Ellen, but OPEC agreed to gradually ease production cuts. So you had a deal with her last week. Some of the listeners may not have tuned into that. So what's the deal with OPEC? Are they going to extend these cuts? If so, do we know for how long? When are they going to start ramping up production? And I mean, how do you see that playing out?
Yeah, you have this, and also news this morning, or at least I found an article this morning that the Saudis are raising their price for the Q1, I think it is, or early next year. And so they're raising their Asia price for early next year. So OPEC feels like they have, maybe at least the Saudis maybe feel like they're in a good spot right now. And that's kind of interesting because, think about where we're at in this timeline. We are, 23 days, 24 days for the end of the year. The vaccine, to my knowledge, has not been rolled out anywhere in mass, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that means that you're going to expect more COVID cases, more restrictions, and more shutdowns through the winter. Unless I missed something, right? I mean, I'm asking, all seriousness.
That seems to be a fair deduction. I would tend to agree with that.
Okay. So the fact that the oil prices, WTI sitting at 45 and Brent's at 48 right now is absolutely stunning. LA, I know, is back under tighter restrictions. So I'm curious where the optimism comes from. Obviously, I think if you believe the vaccine will be mass distributed by the end of Q1 next year, that's one thing. But believing that the vaccine will be distributed and people will demand will increase by the end of Q1 is not saying that the price is priced right today. That's something different. And so we got David Blackman coming on. I'm curious what he thinks, because to me the price seems high. It seems like it's due for a correction. It hasn't, so maybe it won't. I don't know. And the final thing I wrote about this today in the War Room newsletter actually was this kind of, a lot of the stock market right now is really inflated. It's overinflated because of the Fed pumping money into it. And so the oil and gas market feels the same way, that we're, the price is too high. And I don't want to be like a Debbie Downer. I don't want low prices. That's not what I want. I just don't know. I'm concerned, I guess, that we're going to set ourselves up for failure here in 2-3 months when if we have a big price collapse and then folks, over drilled because they thought the price would be sustainable. Final thing is, though, it might give companies a hedge price, and so they could hedge out their oil for 2021, which will allow them to work. Of course, it wouldn't be good for the the market price, but they could hedge out a little bit further and be able to drill even though the prices are low.
I wonder how those hedge companies feel when the oil hit negative 37 and they had it hedged at 50. I mean, do you think they're a little cautious about doing hedges now? I bet they have. I mean, they have to have. Wait, there was a threshold though. If it hit below a certain number, though,
Well,
it
yeah,
would
there's some type,
offset.
there's some type of couple type of hedges depending on what they're doing, but yeah, I don't know what they're going to do about that. If they're how they're going to price it to sell it. I would be, I wouldn't want to sell a hedge right now, right?
Yeah, no.
Because we got to get through this thing and kind of go forward. Now, I would want to buy a hedge if I was an oil and gas producer, but I don't. I would not want to be in the business of guaranteeing I'm going to pay you a certain amount of money for 2021.
No, yeah, especially I mean, unless there was a certain like a certain you could have a safety net. If it drops below 38,
Right, right.
then my hedge at 50 drops to 42 or something like that. It's like structure it that way.
Spread on it, right? Yeah, and there are some that are kind of structured that way. I'm not the hedging guru here, but we can get on. Who was it, Pickering or whoever who kind of follows that stuff. But anyways, with that being said, if you're sitting here and you're looking at 2021 and you're thinking, dang, we went through this year and price is only at $45 a barrel, that's a good sign if you believe that the price is right. I'm just not convinced that the price is where it should be. So, but it is what it is. Well, I guess the price is there, and so we'll have to see where it is as we move forward.
Well, we have another article. So, pricing agency considers adding WTI Midland to benchmark. So, this could potentially be good news for WTI. It might help pricing and the way that it is traded. So, it's an interesting article. We'll link in the show notes if you want to go take a look at it just to get some more information. But I think they've been looking at this for quite a while, but what they're saying is that it's not really going to affect anything until March, cargoes until March of 2022. So it shouldn't have a quick effect. It's not going to be anything very soon, but going forward after that, it could have a positive impact.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to see if they do put it on there. I hadn't heard, I didn't know they were considering doing that. That would be interesting to see what that does for the price differentials out there.
I saw there's an article, we didn't pull it up. There's an article where they were, people were trying to discourage drilling out in the sea. And it's going to go into one of the things we're going to mention at the end. Heck, I'll mention it now. Denmark is planning to phase out oil and gas production by 2050. So when I say phase out, they're trying to be done, it looks like, by 2050. So they're going to be phasing it out, and they're trying to get to a point where they're no longer using fossil fuels, or not using it, no longer producing fossil fuels by 2050. That's pretty. The thing is, Ryan, when I hear that, it's like it's so far out there. When I see these projections or what they're going to do by 2050, it's like, okay, so when you're wrong in 2050, what are you going to say? I mean,
right.
What's the recourse if you don't hit that number? Like, do you burn the whole country down, or well, there's no recourse to this stuff. And that's the thing that frustrates me is they say stuff without there's no penalty or no.
Yeah, it's a little bit different if you're an elected official to be completely wrong. Where there's me and you on a podcast that's completely wrong. So I read this. Maybe I read this wrong, Josh. I read this as they're going to stop issuing new licenses, and so what will happen is, you might could drill, and I don't know the full details of this story, but the way I understand this to be is that if you drilled in 2050 because you had a license to drill in 2050, that's fine as long as that well will go offshore. As long as it'll go, you're good to go. But once it's done, there's going to be no new drilling in 2051 or 2052 or 2053. So eventually, it will be phased out like that. That's how I read it. I didn't read it to be that they're going to stop allowing you to drill in 2050. You see the difference?
Well, so yeah. So the way I read it, and it may not be specific enough, but what I saw was they were going to stop there. You're right about the new licenses, but it looks like they're going to start doing that now. They're starting to phase out new licenses now. so that by 2050 there's no more production. That's what I thought I saw, but
Okay, maybe I misread it then.
I could be wrong as well. Yeah, that'd be something that we'll follow up on it. I'll check it. I'll check in on it.
Now, we have the whole crude quality issue, and we'll kind of put that aside. But let's be honest, stories like this are good for Texas. Okay,
Yeah,
stories like this are good.
absolutely.
So, we don't. I know we have listeners. I think I put it out the other day. I said you think about our what we're in like 40 countries or something on Spotify alone.
Yeah, we're like number one in Kazakhstan.
Yeah. Well, that was a different deal. Yeah. So that's you the Spotify stuff. I bet I did. You probably were communist. Yeah, I did. You didn't. You just didn't read it. Here it is. So we're in like 38 countries on Spotify. Oh, by the way, we're in Audible. So if you have Audible now, you can download our podcast in Audible. Let's see here. So on Spotify, we're in 38 countries. So for the folks in Denmark, and we're big in Canada, we're big in the UK. Those folks just don't. Yeah. So we're up 393% in Canada, 270% in the UK, and 49% in the US. I'm a little concerned though because the folks over there in Denmark, which is 38 countries. Yeah, this is for Spotify, not our iTunes platform, which is bigger. I'm a little concerned, Josh, because the folks in Denmark might hear that we're saying is good for Texas, and then might try to go back and undo some of this nonsense. So maybe we shouldn't cover the global stories on here.
Well, we got to be careful directing international affairs.
International policy, right?
Yeah, we got to be careful with that.
To your question about what does this mean long term? I think this year is kind of the year where you can just say anything. I mean, think about some of the discussions we've had just in the U.S. alone this year. And so obviously this is the larger narrative that's been playing for quite some time now. But in 5 years, if they come back and change their mind, I won't be surprised, and you won't either, or 10 years or whatever it is. But it feels like this year you kind of get the pass to say, hey, we're making big plans 20, 30, 40 years down the road, and not really going to get a lot of investigation into that because everyone else is, looking into the pandemic and all the stuff involved with that.
Well, I mean, just the sheer volume of miscalculations this year. 2.2 million people were going to die with the shutdown or without it or something like that. And then, I mean, there's just the numbers have been staggering that have been put out and how wrong these people have been. It seems like you can just say anything if you're an elected official and not have any recourse. So,
or a podcast host.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, our listeners, they don't learn how to acclimate to people being wrong so often because we're right so much at the time.
Yeah. They're a little stunned when they leave this podcast, right?
Yeah, the real world. So we got a couple of stories I want to hit. So number one, Concho warns of 500 Houston job cuts as I say Concho, ConocoPhillips and Concho deal that's happening. 500 Houston job cuts is what they're portraying is going to take place here.
So hold on, I think you got it backwards here. ConocoPhillips is going to dismiss 500 people because of the Concho deal.
Right. Yeah. They're going to be picking some people to fill, but because of the acquisition, they're going to be getting rid of a lot of the excess.
Yeah, and that's bad news for folks right now because anytime 500 people get laid off, obviously, nothing to sneeze
500
at. Right?
In Houston is.
But right now, where are you going to go get a job? That's going to be a tough market to be in.
Yeah, just listeners can do this. I mean, if you just look at Conoco and Concho, those names are really close.
Yeah, no,
so it's easy to flip them around.
No, I don't blame you. I had to read it twice because I was like, wait, what's going on here? I'm not sure if you read that right, so I read it. But no, it's Conoco warns of 500 job cuts as the Concho deal nears. I actually thought they had a typo because it's it's so close.
All right, today we have guest David Blackman back on the show with us. He's an editor of Shell Magazine and a contributor for Forbes. And it's been a little while since we had you back on the show, David. So glad to have you, man.
Yeah, man. I was feeling left out, guys.
Well, we're sorry about that. It's been, I think I sent you a message. If you want to come on and drink some beer and we can all cry on our beer,
There we go. Yeah.
it's been a rough few months. That's putting it mildly. So,
Yeah.
David, we were talking before you got on about the price. So, for those who, I guess the last time me and you talked about the price or anything was at our Shell round table. And quick summary there was, everyone kind of agreed that 2021 is, probably going to be a rough year for producers. But I'm intrigued right now. The price WTI is at what, 45? We were talking about this before you came on.
Yeah, it was over 46 Friday.
Yeah, the Saudis are talking about increasing their price to their Asia market. Doesn't make sense to me because it feels like more shutdowns, lockdowns, and loss of demand's coming. David, but you are the expert. What am I missing here?
Well, yeah, but I think it's going to be pretty short term this time. It looks like we have kind of a similar scenario with COVID going on right now that happened late in the summer, where you're going to have about a month-long spike and then it's going to rapidly decline. And then at least theoretically, we have at least 3 different vaccines that are going to come on the market in the next month or two that are going to be miracle cures and clear the whole thing up for us, just like the flu vaccine is every year. And, yeah,
sarcasm, if you can't tell.
Yeah. But, I think what has people actually fairly optimistic about from the demand side is what's been happening in Eastern Asia. And really in India as well, even with some shutdowns and lockdowns, demand just keeps rising and recovering. And it's recovering pretty strongly in Europe too, in spite of all the things that are going on there related to COVID. So, people need gasoline and people need to move around. And even in the United States, even though traffic is reduced, and I think is permanently reduced as a result of all this, I think we'll have millions of people working from home now who were not working from home before. Those people still get out and go to the grocery store and want to go to dinner in the evening. And so, I think overall demand's going to be down after all of this is over. It won't be 100 million barrels a year globally, but it might be 98 million, and it might recover to 100 million by 2022. I've seen several projections that sometime during 2021, even OPEC thinks we're going to be back at the 100 million barrel demand globally. So I think that's a pretty optimistic scenario, but the whole thing, we just keep coming back to this as we have for 3 years now. The whole thing, house of cards, depends on OPEC plus and that deal hanging together. Those countries are right now holding 7.7 million barrels a day of their own production off of the market. And that's the only thing that's enabled the price to go as high as it is. It's the only thing that has allowed probably hundreds of American producers to avoid bankruptcy court until now. And if that thing falls apart again, just like it did, by the way, on March 4th of this year, we're going to be right back where we started from with less than $20 a barrel oil and no visible way to recover from that. And I'll stop now. We can talk about Iran and the Biden administration.
Well, yeah. So real quick, I wanted to bring up the Asia stuff because China, I believe, is the second largest oil and gas market in the world, behind the U.S. And while China's official policy is they don't have allies and they're not really trying to make anybody mad and they're just out here doing their thing and whatever. It wouldn't surprise me to see China put a little pressure on the U.S. by going to some of these OPEC nations saying, hey, listen, we need more oil. We'd like to put it in storage. We'd like to keep it. And you could see some pressure come from OPEC plus because of China looking to strike deals, just like they struck a deal with Iran a few months back.
Sure. And today we have not just China, but today we have the largest flotilla of crude oil laden tankers heading from Iran to Venezuela. Because Venezuela has stopped producing oil, basically, or stopped drilling anyway. It's still producing, but it's a fraction of what it was. And so now they're beginning to import a bunch of crude from Iran. And if when Biden becomes president, you re-enter the Iran deal, and suddenly Another million barrels a day at least is on the market from Iran alone.
And real quick on that, are you of the belief on the Iranian oil that it's already on the market, but it's being hidden as kind of Anas is, or
A
do you
lot of it
think
is.
okay, yeah, and that's part of the problem is that the market maybe there's more oil out there than we're even accounting for because of the Iranian stuff.
Right. Yeah, there is, but it's not an overwhelming amount, and the OPEC Plus deal has overshadowed that.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as that deal can hold together, we can continue along with this current kind of a scenario. But I just, and I've always written about this many, many times, and it's just you always have that caveat sitting there for U.S. shale producers. Their whole business model currently and for the last 3 years has been dependent on that deal of adversarial countries, who are adversaries, competitors, keeping their own crude off the market in order to enable you to remain, keep your business model going. And that's a bad place to be.
Yeah. Well, Josh and I were talking before you got on about Denmark. I think it was is getting rid of their licenses or cutting their licenses and to be net zero negative carbon whatever by 2050. News like that we're saying is actually good for Texas oil and gas, right? Because
sure,
if some of these European countries, even though it's not the same type of crude, are going to push away from the oil and gas industry, in the long haul, that's got to be a benefit for us. But I mean, it's not 2021, obviously, but there is, I guess, light at the long tunnel, end of the tunnel, maybe.
Yeah, and of course, how much it is dependent on how real that net zero really is. Are they doing it for real? Are they really going to generate all their energy from renewable sources, or are they doing it through this scam of trading green credits, right? Which emissions credits is just this shell game that kind of you have the overall globally, you still have the same amount of emissions. You just shift the responsibility for them to somewhere else, right? And you have these cute little credits here that you get to say, oh, gee, we're getting all our energy from renewable sources, when in reality you're not. It's not true. It's not real. And it has no impact on the real world market. So when I see those announcements, you always have to get into the fine print and see exactly how it is they're going to try to accomplish that, because a lot of it's just frankly fraudulent and pure PR stunt. And, so again, its real impact on the market just depends on how real it really is. I use the word real a lot.
Yeah. I mean, with the Biden administration coming up, I think a lot of companies are going to have to start posturing with this PR a lot more aggressively, because it's. I mean, the cuts on, they're about to stop drilling on federal lands or put restrictions on that, and then just in general, I mean, you got Oxy coming out saying they're going to be zero emissions by 2050, and then you got the stuff that Ryan mentioned in Denmark. I think we're going to keep seeing this coming up, and I don't know how we're going to be able to keep up with that sort of pace.
Well, we're not. And to the extent the industry thinks that engaging in those kinds of PR stunts is going to impress anyone at the EPA and the Biden administration, they have to remember that the people who will be staffing the EPA and a Biden administration are the people who literally invented the green credit scam. Okay. They know how that game is played. And if they think that, oh, gee, I'm going to get to zero emissions by 2050, and that's going to somehow help stave off these major regulations that will be coming down from EPA, they're living in a dream world. I mean, these people know how that game is played. And like I say, they're the ones who invented it. So I just don't think it does any companies any good. Now, to the extent they're really going to do it and want to invest their capital in real renewable energy projects, like, you have to give credit to BP and Shell to the extent they really do that, because they do invest hundreds of millions of dollars in those things. Even Exxon does. To the extent it's real, then more power to them. If that's how they want to spend their capital dollars and their investors are happy with that and impressed by it, then that's a good corporate strategy. But to the extent they're trying to do it to impress a regulator in a Democratic administration, probably not so much.
Yeah. So we covered a story. It's a few weeks back before the election, I guess a few months back. Exxon had given, I think, 40% of their campaign monies to the Biden camp, and Chevron to the 21% to the Biden camp. The last numbers that we saw, something like that. You might have coordinated numbers, and it's not surprising from the standpoint of big companies doing that. But when I first met you, David, I was this about 4 years been doing podcasts and stuff. So Trump had just came in office, and we started talking. And one of the things that you were really harping on was him pulling back the Obama era EPA, the methane emissions regulations, and how that hurts small producers. We're not, we're in a struggling industry right now. Are the smaller producers going to look at some of these bigger guys and say, hey, screw you guys, we're sick and tired of these regulations, and you try to partner up with the Dems when they get in? You're really trying to squeeze us out through legislation. Might we see a little bit more contentious few years between the smaller guys and the bigger guys where they're out publicly criticizing each other?
Yeah. I mean, we always do in Democratic administrations. We always have that tension in the industry. I remember, I was very active in IPAA and Domestic Petroleum Council during the Clinton years, and we got a lot of stuff done in the Clinton years. But there was that constant tension between the big guys and the little guys. And I think it really probably got even more tense during the Obama administration, just because the Obama administration was really, particularly in its second term, was really trying to crack down on the oil and gas industry. And those regulations really were targeting the small producers a lot more than they were going to do any harm to any of the big guys. So yeah, we'll see that make a big comeback now. And, that's just, there's just always the small producers always have that tension with the majors. You can go back and read The Prize and other really good books on the history of the business, and you'll see that, going back to the East Texas Field and H.L. Hunt and Humble Oil Company,
Well, now social media, though, they can really blast them.
Yeah. There's a lot more ways. Yeah, the communication is a lot more intense and in real time now.
Yeah, a couple more questions for me. Josh, did you have anything else? I didn't cut you off.
Okay.
So, I know you do your annual predictions. This year predictions, we're throwing all of that out the window because of what happened. Have you started to kind of formulate where you're looking for 2021, or are you going to say, you know what, 2020 you want to talk about predictions for 2021?
Well, right now I'm starting the process of putting together my review for 2020. And then the predictions for 2021 will come after that. But you can see some of the just fundamentals. I think we can anticipate that because you've got all this pent up tension within all these companies to drill more wells, I think we'll see a rising rig count in the first quarter, with somewhat, not dramatically, but somewhat bigger drilling budgets for the first half of next year. And that the industry will probably drill too many wells as OPEC Plus is kind of reducing the amount of oil they're holding back from the market at the same time. And I expect towards the end of the first half of the year, we'll have a little glut develop on the market, and the price will go down, and then we'll see a declining rig count for the second half of the year. Some things are sadly predictable, and one thing that's really predictable about our domestic industry here in the U.S. is we will always drill ourselves into a bad situation whenever possible. And I think the first half of this year will make that possible. But as you get towards the end of 2021, if OPEC Plus discipline holds together, there's a real prospect for $60 oil, at least the Brent price, and $55 WTI towards the end of next year. I think just looking ahead that far. But that makes an awful lot of assumptions about what's going to happen with COVID and all that sort of stuff, and politically. So
yeah,
it's really going to be a real hard thing to be right about any predictions for 2020.
Right. No, we're not holding anybody. Listen, we're not holding anybody's feet to the fire on this one. You just can't, because there's so many variables. And one of the things I wrote about this the other day is that the populist kind of ideas and movement, whatever you think about the populist movements, they're different very much geographically and by country and by region, but there's a lot of populist movements that are going on internationally. And so I'm not entirely convinced that next year we might not see instability from the standpoint of the populist movements in these various countries looking to their government leaders saying, you know what, you guys screwed us for the past year. You've been screwed us for a long time. We're just not listening to you guys anymore. And that might be a unique pressure on oil demand that we might see coming out of COVID. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but that's kind of one of the things I'm kind of
it could be. And all that's a rejection, particularly in Europe, of globalism, just like Trumpism has been a rejection of globalism here in the United States. And this thought process. So it's not just America that has shipped jobs to China and South Korea. Okay. It's all those European countries too. And at the same time, all those countries have allowed pretty much open borders immigration with a few exceptions. And so you have just a dramatically higher rate of unemployment, lower rate of economic growth in Europe, throughout Europe. And I think that's really the pressure that is leading to all those populist movements over there, just as it led to the same thing here in the United States. As a result of this election this year in the U.S., we're kind of backing away from that, at least for 4 years here in the U.S. And we just have to see how that goes.
Are we back away for 4 years or for 2 years?
Well,
I would say this. Tell you what, that regardless of whatever you think about Biden, I think everyone agrees he's not going to run again. He's kind of said that. I don't think he'd be too old. He's not going to run again. So at the midterms, Kamala is going to want to take a more prominent role in the administration because she will want to run in 2024. To me, the Republicans have a really 2-year window to really, gain back, seats in the House or, whatever happens in the Senate, we'll see. Obviously, Biden will be in charge for 4 years, but you might even have a divided presidential administration in the last 2 years. What are your thoughts on that?
I suspect Kamala will be the president before the midterms. I don't think the plan is for Biden to serve 4 years, and I'm just being blunt about it.
Right.
I really don't anticipate he'll remain in the presidency through the end of 2021. But yeah, you get to those midterms, if the economy has stalled and begun to fail during Biden-Harris first term, then the midterms are going to go very badly for the incumbent administration, as they generally do. And you'll see the Republicans have majorities in both houses of Congress again, and that will stall the Biden legislative agenda. But really starting with the George W. Bush administration, the presidency has become much stronger than Congress in the U.S. Government hierarchy, and most business of each administration, at least the past 3 administrations, has been done via executive orders and regulatory processes.
Yeah.
So Congress can hold back the worst of the legislation, but it doesn't do you much good on the regulatory agenda.
That's very true. Well, Congress doesn't want to do anything. That's their
right.
Problem.
Exactly.
But no, the populist thing is interesting to me just because, we'll see what happens in the U.S. in the next, year or 2 or 3, or the Biden administration. But I do think that kind of gets missed. The U.S. media at large does not cover international news, and so
at all,
it's
distressing.
When there's people protesting in the streets of wherever over whatever in the U.S., you kind of feel like, God, we're the only ones pissed off at anything. Well, if you go to anywhere else, everyone's pissed off about everything right now. And so I
don't think there's ever a time in Paris that there's not an enormous crowd demonstrating about something, at the Arc de Triomphe or whatever. I'm sure I mispronounced that, but and London, it's constant in Berlin and Vienna, and it's just our media doesn't cover it anymore, which is really a terrible development in the U.S. news media.
Yeah. So and then if you look at Africa, there's a lot of unrest there in Central and South America. So I am concerned from a demand standpoint that we might see unrest. I do think that the counter that is that the U.S. and the UN will be pumping gazillions of dollars into these emerging markets to try to to stave off some of that unrest. So anyways, I don't know
Yeah.
how that factors into the demand. I just think that we are still on, even if the COVID vaccine works, I think we're still on rocky grounds from a lot of other issues going into 2021. As you mentioned,
Yep.
people want to have a job, and if their job's in China or Vietnam or wherever it is, that doesn't know the vaccine do them any good. So, but okay, final word, David.
Oh no, I agree with you. That's all I was going to say.
Okay, DB Daily Update, Shell Mag, Forbes. Anything else that we missed that we need to point people to find you?
No, that's pretty much all I got going on, man.
Okay.
I'm boring.
Well, we will get you on after the new year, maybe into January, early February. We won't keep it so long.
Good. Always happy to be here.
Well, we love getting you on, and it's good to see you. Hope you had a good Thanksgiving and a Merry Christmas and a wonderful New Year. And here's wishing that 2021 is slightly better, at least the 2020. So it can't be worse, right, David? We've hit the bottom.
Oh, God help us if it is, man. It's been a rough go this year.
It has been.
Yeah.
All right, sir. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks again to David joining us on the show today. It's been a while since we had him on. It's great to hear his insights and projections that he sees for the end of 2020 and 2021. So great having him back on the show.
I love that he's calling the Kamala Harris shot.
Yeah.
She's going to be in by the end of 2021. Is what he said.
Yeah.
I love it. So
I would not be surprised whatsoever.
Listen, after 20, so let me tell you something about 2020. I don't care what tinfoil hat conspiracy you want to put on. You can't, after 2020, everything's on the table for discussion. We're talking about defunding the police. We're talking about shutting down, euthanasia. I mean, we've talked about a lot of crazy stuff. Okay.
Yeah, dude, I heard, you might have to edit this out.
Oh, God.
So I heard somebody told me today that that the vaccines were phase 2 of China's attack on the U.S. So phase 1 was COVID. Phase 2 is the vaccine. Yeah. So I'm not wearing the tinfoil hat. I just there's stuff out there. There's there's enough conspiracies out there this year.
Oh yeah. This is the real conspiracy is that they kicked Alex Jones off because they knew that COVID was coming. And like, could you imagine if Alex Jones was on all social media right now?
Oh my God.
Oh, he'd be having a heyday.
It'd be great.
He'd be having a heyday. Yeah.
He would.
Oh, man. So, hey, one final thing before we get off here. If you want to support the show, War Room newsletter, we'll link to that. The first link in the show notes. We'd really appreciate it. And we have on a guest for the rest of the year. Supposedly the big timer Sergio Chapa will be reappearing before the end of 2020. So, well, I'm not getting my hopes up. You know how he is, Josh. So we'll see. But with that is it for today, and we'll be back next week. And until then, keep bobbing.